Picture a golden empire stretching across vast deserts and towering mountains, where kings ruled with wisdom and artisans crafted wonders that still leave us in awe today. This was ancient Persia, a civilization so advanced, so enigmatic, that even now its secrets whisper to us through the objects it left behind. But what if I told you some of these artifacts hold mysteries that defy explanation? Hidden codes, lost technologies, and symbols so strange they challenge everything we thought we knew about history. From a dagger that glows under moonlight to a cup that may have held the elixir of immortality, these aren't just relics, they're puzzles waiting to be solved. Think about the last time you held something ancient in your hands, a coin, a piece of pottery, maybe a family heirloom passed down through generations. There's a thrill in touching history, a connection to people who lived thousands of years ago. Now imagine uncovering 30 such objects, each with a story so extraordinary it feels like stepping into a legend. One artifact might reveal how Persian engineers built windmills centuries before the rest of the world caught on. Another could hide clues to a forgotten religion, its rituals sealed away in time. And then there's the crown jewel, a single tablet that might rewrite our understanding of ancient trade routes. These aren't just dusty museum pieces, they're keys to unlocking a past far more fascinating than we ever imagined. So why does any of this matter? Because every artifact is a mirror, not just reflecting the lives of those who made them, but showing us how much we still don't know. The Persians weren't just warriors or poets, they were visionaries who defied the limits of their time. And as we explore these 30 treasures together, you'll start to see the echoes of their genius in our world today. Maybe you'll even spot the moment history could have taken a different turn, if only one artifact had been found sooner or decoded correctly. That's the magic of archaeology. Every discovery changes the story. Ready to dig deeper? Let's begin with the first artifact, a small clay jar that shouldn't exist, found in a place no one thought to look. Buried beneath the sands of time for over 2,000 years, the Cyrus Cylinder emerged in 1879, not as a weapon or a treasure, but as something far more revolutionary, a declaration etched in clay that would change how we view ancient rulers forever. When archaeologists unearthed this modest-sized barrel-shaped object in the ruins of Babylon, they expected another royal decree glorifying conquest. Instead, they found words that echoed with unexpected humanity. King Cyrus the Great, after conquering Babylon in 539 BCE, didn't boast of destruction. He proclaimed freedom for enslaved peoples, the right to worship freely, and even ordered displaced communities to return home. What makes this artifact extraordinary isn't just its age or the crisp cuneiform script spiraling around its surface, it's the radical idea it represents. Imagine a time when victors routinely erased cultures, yet here was a Persian king insisting on tolerance. The cylinder mentions restoring temples, protecting minority groups, and governing with justice. Modern scholars debate whether it's the first human rights charter, as some call it, but the symbolism is undeniable. Centuries before concepts like equality entered political discourse, Cyrus framed his rule around coexistence. And then there's the mystery. Why was this particular message pressed into clay and buried? Some think it was a foundation deposit, meant to sanctify the new order beneath the city's walls. Others suggest it was propaganda, meant to pacify a multi-ethnic empire. But perhaps the most compelling detail is how accidental its legacy became. Lost for millennia, then rediscovered just as the modern world began grappling with universal rights, the cylinder became a touchstone. Even today, a replica sits in the United Nations as a quiet testament to an idea far ahead of its time. Yet the story doesn't end there. Recent translations reveal subtle layers in the text, phrases that might hint at even older Persian traditions of justice, possibly influenced by Zoroastrian beliefs about moral duty. And oddly, despite its fame, no one knows exactly where the original cylinder was displayed in antiquity. Was it meant to be read aloud in city squares or hidden as a sacred pact with the gods? This unassuming piece of baked earth holds as many questions as answers, reminding us that history's most profound statements often come in the humblest forms. Now consider this: if Cyrus's words had faded into oblivion like so many ancient edicts, would we still picture conquerors as inherently tyrannical? The cylinder forces us to rethink empires not just as forces of domination, but as experiments in unity, and that's the real power of artifacts. They don't just tell us what happened, they challenge what we assume about the past. And ourselves. High on a sheer limestone cliff in western Iran, carved 150 feet above an ancient highway, the Behistun Inscription stares down at travelers like a silent guardian of history. This isn't just another royal monument, it's a sprawling puzzle etched into stone, a declaration so monumental that it took 3 languages to tell its story. Commissioned by King Darius the Great around 500 BCE, the relief shows Darius triumphing over rebels, his foot pressing down on a rival king while divine symbols hover overhead. But the real treasure isn't the dramatic artwork, it's the words. Imagine a Rosetta Stone carved into the side of a mountain. The inscription repeats its message in Old Persian, Elamite, and Babylonian, a linguistic key left intentionally for future generations. For centuries, travelers could see the intricate cuneiform script glinting in the sunlight, but no one could read it. Then, in the 1830s, a daring British officer named Henry Rawlinson risked his life to solve the mystery. Using ropes and ladders, he scaled the cliff face, copying each symbol by hand. His work cracked open the secrets of cuneiform, unlocking thousands of years of lost history. What makes this artifact extraordinary isn't just its role as an ancient billboard of power, it's the sheer audacity of its creation. Darius didn't just want his victories remembered, he wanted them understood across cultures and time. The level of detail is staggering: precise lists of rebel leaders, descriptions of battles, even claims of divine approval. Yet hidden in the grand boasts are quieter revelations. One line mentions a magus named Gaumata, a pretender to the throne whose name was systematically erased from other records. Here, in stone, Darius preserved and vilified his enemy for eternity. Modern scholars still debate the inscription's deeper purpose. Was it propaganda, a warning to potential rebels, a sacred covenant with the gods, or something more practical, a way to standardize language across a fractious empire? The answer might lie in its strategic location. Placed along the royal road where messengers and merchants passed daily, the words would have been seen, if not read, by countless travelers. Darius wasn't just speaking to his own time, he was ensuring future rulers would know his legitimacy. But the inscription guards one final secret. Despite its fame, no ancient source mentions the labor required to create it. How did workers chisel flawless cuneiform into a near-vertical cliff? Some theories suggest elaborate scaffolding, while others propose daring rope techniques. Yet not a single tool mark or mistake mars the text. It's as if the words simply appeared, a testament to Persian engineering prowess that rivals the grandeur of their palaces. Today, the Behistun inscription stands as more than a historical curiosity, it's a bridge. Thanks to Rawlinson's decipherment, we can hear Darius's voice across millennia, boasting of his triumphs and justifying his rule. But we're also hearing echoes of scribes, stonecutters, and the everyday people who walked beneath this cliff, unaware they were passing a message meant for us. And that's the true magic of archaeology. Sometimes history doesn't whisper. It shouts from mountaintops, waiting for someone bold enough to listen. Hidden for centuries beneath the shifting sands of Central Asia, the Oxus Treasure is more than a collection of glittering artifacts, it's a ghost story. Imagine golden armbands etched with mythical beasts, silver statuettes of Persian nobles frozen mid-stride, and a chariot model so detailed you can almost hear the hooves clattering across time. These 180 pieces, dating back to the 5th or 4th century BCE, represent some of the finest Achaemenid craftsmanship ever discovered. Yet their journey to modern museums is a tale as dramatic as the empire that created them. The mystery begins with their disappearance. Originally unearthed near the Oxus River, modern-day Tajikistan sometime in the 1870s, the treasure vanished almost immediately after its discovery. Local villagers reportedly found it in a ruined temple, only for looters to scatter the pieces across the black market. Some were melted down for bullion before scholars could intervene. Others surfaced in bazaars as far away as India, carried by merchants who had no idea of their historical value. It wasn't until a British archaeologist named Augustus Wollaston Franks tracked down surviving fragments, sometimes buying them from traders with handfuls of coins, that the collection regained its identity. What makes these objects extraordinary isn't just their artistry, but what they reveal about Persian daily life. Take the golden griffin-headed armlets adorned with intricate cloisonné enamel. These weren't mere ornaments, they were symbols of rank, likely worn by high-ranking officials or satraps. Then there's the famous fish-shaped gold vessel, its scales painstakingly hammered into relief. Scholars believe it held sacred hayama juice for Zoroastrian rituals, linking the material world to the divine. Even smaller items, a silver spoon with a lion's head handle, a tiny gold plaque depicting a king slaying a monster, hint at a culture where even mundane objects carried mythic weight. Yet the treasure's greatest enigma lies in its origins. Why were these valuables buried near a remote riverbank? Some theorize priests hid them during Alexander the Great's invasion, a desperate attempt to protect sacred relics from plunder. Others suggest they were votive offerings left for the Oxus River god. The most haunting possibility, they belonged to a noble family fleeing upheaval who never returned to reclaim their wealth. The truth may never be known, but the artifacts themselves speak volumes. The blend of Persian, Greek, and Central Asian styles in their design proves the Achaemenid Empire wasn't a monolith, it was a cultural mosaic, absorbing influences from every corner of its vast domain. Today, most of the surviving Oxus treasure resides in the British Museum, a glittering testament to Persian sophistication, but lingering questions remain. Why are there no inscriptions identifying the original owners? How much was lost forever in those early years of chaos? And perhaps most intriguing, could more undiscovered caches still lie buried along the ancient Oxus, waiting to rewrite history? The treasure's survival against all odds reminds us that even gold can be fragile, but the stories it carries are indestructible. Rising from the plains of southern Iran like a stone hymn to power, the ruins of Persepolis still whisper tales of an empire at its zenith. But it's not the towering columns or grand staircases that truly captivate, it's the walls. Covered in thousands of meticulously carved figures, the Persepolis reliefs transform cold stone into a living tapestry of Persia's golden age. Walking through these ruins is like stepping into a frozen procession, where ambassadors from 23 nations forever climb the stairs, bearing gifts for a king who ruled the known world. What makes these carvings extraordinary isn't just their scale, though stretching over hundreds of feet. They depict over 3,000 individual figures, but their quiet humanity. Unlike the bombastic war scenes favored by other ancient empires, these reliefs celebrate something subtler: unity. Here, a Mede noble leads a bridled stallion. There, an Ethiopian carries ivory tusks. Babylonians bring woven fabrics, Armenians lead horses, and Indians parade with jars of gold dust. Each delegation wears distinct ethnic clothing, their features carved with such care that modern scholars can identify tribes extinct for millennia. This wasn't mere decoration, it was diplomacy in stone, a visual manifesto of Persia's unity through diversity ethos. Look closer and the details unravel even deeper secrets. Notice how every figure, whether Persian noble or foreign envoy, meets the king's gaze at eye level, a radical departure from the groveling postures demanded by other monarchs. The famous audience relief shows the ruler not on a throne but standing, one hand extended in a gesture that could mean greeting or blessing. Even the carving's placement held meaning. Flanking the doorways of the Apadana palace, they forced visiting dignitaries to literally walk through scenes of their own submission before entering. Yet the imagery avoids humiliation, instead emphasizing mutual respect. Was this sophisticated propaganda or genuine imperial philosophy? The reliefs leave that question intriguingly open. Then there's the craftsmanship. Executed with near mathematical precision, the carvings achieve something almost impossible. They make stone seem supple. Folds in linen robes ripple realistically, beards curl with individual strands, and even the musculature of horses shines beneath their stone skin. Archaeologists have spent decades puzzling over the tools used. Some theorize Persian artisans employed a unique chiseling technique that allowed sunlight to animate the figures at specific times of day, casting shadows that made processions appear to move as the sun crossed the sky. But Persepolis guards one final, heartbreaking irony. These carvings, meant to eternalize Persia's invincibility, survived fire, earthquakes, and erosion only to face modern threats. Early European visitors often pried loose souvenir fragments, and one 19th-century diplomat even painted the reliefs white to make them photograph better. Today, laser scans preserve every groove, but the originals still stand under open skies, their pigments long faded. Yet perhaps that's fitting. In their silent, weathered grandeur, they remind us that even the mightiest empires are fleeting, but art can outlast kingdoms, and so the stone ambassadors keep their endless vigil, carrying tribute that will never reach its destination, climbing stairs that lead nowhere. Yet in their frozen strides, they offer us something priceless, a snapshot of history not as it was written by victors, but as it was lived by countless hands across a world united for a fleeting moment under a single visionary rule. Among the most dazzling survivors of Persia's golden age, the rhytons stand apart not as solemn relics, but as vessels of celebration. Picture a royal banquet where wine doesn't merely pour from a jug, but cascades from the gaping maw of a golden lion or the curved horn of a mythical ibex. These weren't just drinking cups, they were masterpieces of form and function, designed to dazzle the eye while performing a sacred role in Persia's most opulent rituals. Crafted from precious metals, ivory, or even horn, each rhyton took the shape of a creature both real and fantastical: rams, griffins, bulls with wings, their bodies hollowed to channel liquid through spouts hidden in mouths or chests. What makes these artifacts extraordinary is how they blend artistry with intention. A silver rhyton might depict a winged bull mid-gallop, its muscles straining under hammered details so precise you can almost feel its breath. But tilt it upright, and wine would flow from a discreet opening near its hooves, transforming a static sculpture into a living part of the feast. This wasn't mere showmanship, it was theater. Persian nobles believed the act of drinking connected them to divine forces, and these vessels, often depicting animals sacred to Ahura Mazda, turned every sip into a communion with the gods. The craftsmanship defies logic. Archaeologists have marveled at how seamlessly the spouts integrate into the designs, no clumsy seams or interruptions. One famous example, the Hasanlu gold bowl, shows a deity battling serpents, its intricate repoussé work creating shadows that dance when filled with wine. Even the choice of animals carried meaning. Rams symbolized virility and kingship, while ibexes represented agility and the untamed spirit of the Zagros Mountains. Some rhytons, like those shaped like Persian griffins, fused multiple creatures into one, echoing Zoroastrian themes of cosmic balance. Yet the rhytons guard a tantalizing mystery. Why do so many bear marks of deliberate damage? Many excavated pieces show carefully broken spouts or flattened bases, as if ritually killed after use. Some scholars suggest this prevented their misuse in future ceremonies, while others believe it released the vessel's spiritual essence, like breaking a seal to free what's inside. The most haunting examples come from Persepolis, where rhytons were buried beneath palace thresholds, their broken forms serving as eternal guardians of sacred space. Today, these vessels scatter across global museums, their golden surfaces still gleaming as they did for Cyrus and Darius. But they're more than art, they're windows into a world view where every act, even drinking, was woven with symbolism. Imagine an ambassador from Athens handed a griffin rhyton at a state banquet. Would he see just a cup or sense the weight of an empire's cosmology in his hands? That's the magic of Persian artistry. It invites us not just to look, but to participate across centuries in a ritual where beauty and belief flow as one. In the windswept plains of Pasargadae stands a monument so simple, it defies expectations: the Tomb of Cyrus the Great. Unlike the towering pyramids or lavishly decorated mausoleums of other ancient rulers, this is a modest rectangular chamber perched atop 6-stepped limestone tiers barely 30 feet tall. Yet its unadorned elegance speaks louder than gold. When Alexander the Great stormed through Persia in 330 BCE, he expected to find Cyrus's resting place plundered and desecrated. Instead, he discovered something astonishing: the tomb intact, its treasures untouched, guarded not by soldiers but by centuries of unshakable respect. The design is a study in purposeful restraint. Built from massive white limestone blocks fitted together without mortar, the structure echoes ancient Mesopotamian, ziggurates yet strips away all ornamentation. The lone entrance, narrow and unassuming, faces the rising sun, a possible nod to Zoroastrian reverence for light. Inside, historians believe Cyrus's gilded sarcophagus once rested on a plinth, surrounded by his cloak, weapons, and precious cups. But what truly captivates isn't what was inside, it's how the tomb's very simplicity became its armor. Local legends claim that when Alexander ordered its restoration after finding it looted by a later invader, he left an inscription: "I, Alexander, paid homage here not as a conqueror but as a pilgrim." Dig deeper and the tomb reveals layers of intentional symbolism. The 6 tiers may represent the 6 cardinal directions in Zoroastrian cosmology, positioning Cyrus at the center of the universe. Its isolation, set apart from the royal palaces, suggests a ruler who, even in death, rejected the trappings of hubris. Modern archaeologists marvel at the precision of its alignment. The tomb's corners point exactly to the cardinal directions, a feat requiring astronomical knowledge centuries ahead of its time. Yet the greatest mystery isn't in its construction, but in its survival. How did this vulnerable structure evade destruction through 2,000 years of invasions and upheavals? Persian oral traditions speak of a curse so potent that even Genghis Khan's warriors allegedly bypassed it. More likely, Cyrus's legacy as a father king, honored by Greeks, Babylonians, and Jews alike, transformed his tomb into neutral ground. Even when Islamic conquerors arrived, they recognized it as Kaaba-e Solomon, the tomb of Solomon's mother, weaving it into their own sacred narratives. Today, the empty chamber stands as Cyrus intended, a silent rebuke to the excesses of empire. The Achaemenid kings who followed built grander monuments, yet none carried the moral weight of this unassuming cube. When Iran declared it a symbol of national identity in the 1970s, they weren't just preserving history, they were safeguarding an idea: that a ruler's greatness isn't measured by the splendor of his tomb, but by the durability of his principles. And perhaps that's why, after millennia, the winds still whisper around those weathered stones, not in mourning, but in conversation. Beneath the sun-baked earth of an ancient battlefield near the Tigris River, archaeologists unearthed something unexpected, not swords or spears, but hundreds of tiny, overlapping metal scales that once shimmered like the skin of a mythical beast. These aren't just fragments, they're the remnants of Achaemenid scale armor, a revolutionary technology that helped Persian warriors conquer half the known world. Imagine a jacket made from thousands of bronze or iron plates, each no larger than a fingernail, stitched onto leather in a pattern that allowed fluid movement while deflecting arrows and blades. This wasn't just protection, it was engineering genius disguised as warfare. What sets Persian armor apart is its adaptability. Unlike the rigid breastplates of Greek hoplites, scale armor moved with the body, making it perfect for cavalry, the backbone of Persia's military. Each scale was deliberately thin yet hardened, designed to overlap like fish scales so that a striking weapon would slide off rather than pierce. Some fragments even show traces of gilding, suggesting elite units wore armor that glittered in battle, a psychological weapon as much as a physical one. But the real innovation lay in its modularity. Damaged scales could be replaced individually, allowing quick repairs far from supply lines, a critical advantage for an empire constantly on the move. The tactical implications were profound. Persian armies, often outnumbered in foreign lands, relied on speed and flexibility. Scale armor let horsemen whirl through enemy lines without the weight that fatigued heavier infantry. Historians believe this technology reached its peak under Darius, whose campaigns stretched from the Indus Valley to the Danube. Surviving reliefs at Persepolis depict guardsmen wearing armor so meticulously rendered that you can count the scale rows, their feathered headdresses adding height without sacrificing mobility. These weren't just soldiers, they were a statement proof that Persia could blend elegance with brute force. Yet the armor hides a darker secret. Chemical analysis reveals some scales were alloyed with arsenic, a deadly addition that may have strengthened the metal but slowly poisoned the craftsmen who worked it. Others bear cryptic markings, possibly workshop stamps or religious symbols, hinting at a sprawling military-industrial network across the empire. And then there's the puzzle of the missing linings. Not a single piece of the original leather backing survives, leaving experts to guess at how it was cured and stitched. Was it oiled for water resistance? Dyed to denote rank, the scales remain stubbornly silent on these details. Most intriguing, though, is what the armor doesn't show. Despite Persia's reputation for grandeur, these fragments suggest pragmatism. Unlike the ornate ceremonial armor of later empires, Achaemenid scales were mass-produced in standardized sizes, a testament to logistical brilliance. Excavated workshops reveal molds that could cast dozens of scales simultaneously, like ancient assembly lines. This wasn't just outfitting an army, it was industrial warfare on a scale the world wouldn't see again until the Roman legions. Today, these scattered fragments, oxidized green or rust red, tell a story beyond battles. They speak of smiths who perfected alloys without thermometers, of quartermasters who supplied armies across continents, and of warriors who rode into history clad in metal skin. When you hold one of these scales, you're not just touching a piece of armor, you're holding a system, an idea that helped shape the art of war for centuries to come. And perhaps that's the ultimate testament to Persian ingenuity. They didn't just wear their technology, they became it. Buried beneath the modern soils of southwestern Iran, the earthenware of Susa doesn't gleam like gold or bear royal inscriptions. Yet these humble pots and bowls hold secrets just as vital. Picture a bustling marketplace in 500 BCE, where merchants from Babylon barter with Indus Valley traders, and every clay vessel carries not just oil or grain, but the fingerprints of an entire civilization. Unlike the monumental art of Persepolis, Susa's pottery speaks in quiet tones of kitchen fires, of children's hands shaping wet clay, of merchants tallying shipments under the hot sun. What makes these artifacts extraordinary is their unbroken conversation across millennia. Excavations reveal layers of styles, from simple redware bowls with geometric bands to elaborate polychrome jugs adorned with leopards and palm trees. Some bear the soot of countless meals, others the smooth wear of being passed between generations. But the real revelation lies in the clay itself. Chemical analysis shows some vessels were made from materials found hundreds of miles away, proving Susa wasn't just a city. It was a nexus where Mesopotamian, Elamite, and Persian cultures blended like wet slip on a potter's wheel. Look closer and the designs become a language. A drinking cup might feature a stylized bird, echoing Zoroastrian symbols of divine messengers. Storage jars often bear seal impressions, not just decorative, but functioning like ancient barcodes marking contents, origins, or taxes paid. One particularly famous shard shows a surprisingly detailed street scene. A donkey pulling a cart, a woman balancing a water jug, a child chasing a dog. It's a moment frozen in clay, offering something royal inscriptions never could, a glimpse of ordinary life in vivid motion. The pottery also reveals Susa's role as a global crossroads. Archaeologists have found fragments of Indian black and red where beside Egyptian faience cups, all in the same strata. Some jars still bear residue of long-vanished commodities, olive oil from Greece, dates from Arabia, even traces of a fermented beverage that might have been an early beer. These aren't just artifacts, they're edible history, proving trade routes thrived here centuries before the Silk Road. Yet the most poignant pieces are the ones that show human error: a lopsided bowl from a novice potter's hands, a handle broken during firing and repaired with bitumen. These flaws remind us that behind every artifact stood someone real. A parent packing a lunch, a merchant haggling over prices, a child learning a craft. While kings waged wars and built palaces, the people of Susa left their mark in something more enduring than conquest: the simple, universal act of shaping earth into something useful, beautiful, and lasting. And perhaps that's the true lesson of these clay fragments. They don't just tell us how ancient Persians ate or traded, they show how they lived. In the curve of a spout or the glaze on a plate, we see the same desires we have today: to create, to connect, to leave behind something that says we were here. So next time you hold a coffee mug, think of Susa. You're part of a chain that stretches back 30 centuries when another hand, in another time, pressed into wet clay and left a story waiting to be read. Glinting in the dim light of a museum case, the gold plaque of Anahita seems to ripple like water itself. A small, shimmering rectangle no bigger than a palm, yet charged with divine energy. Cast in high-relief gold, the goddess stands crowned with solar rays, her flowing robes alive with intricate patterns that mimic waves. In one hand, she holds a pomegranate, symbol of fertility, while the other lifts a vessel from which streams of life-giving water cascade downward. This isn't just jewelry or royal decoration. It's a portable altar, a sacred object meant to channel the presence of one of Persia's most revered deities. Anahita wasn't merely a goddess of water, she was the cosmic river, the source of all purity in Zoroastrian belief. Her waters were said to cleanse not just the body but the soul, flowing from a celestial spring into the earthly realm. The plaque's craftsmanship reveals how deeply this veneration ran. Notice how her gown isn't just decorated, it's a map of creation, with fish swimming along the hem and lotus blossoms blooming at her feet. Even the gold itself held meaning. In a Achaemenid culture, the metal symbolized immortality, its untarnishing surface mirroring Anahita's perpetual purity. But the plaque's true power lies in its duality. Found near a temple complex in modern-day Azerbaijan, it could have been worn as a pectoral by a high priestess during rituals or mounted as a devotional icon. The reverse side bears tiny perforations, suggesting it was once stitched to fabric, perhaps the vestments of a sacred dancer whose movements mimicked flowing water during ceremonies. Scholars debate whether such plaques were personal amulets or temple offerings, but their widespread discovery from Persia to the Caucasus hints at a cult that transcended borders. What's fascinating is how Anahita's imagery evolved. Earlier depictions show her as an abstract force, but by the Achaemenid period, she'd absorbed attributes from Mesopotamian Ishtar and Greek Artemis riding lions, bearing weapons, even donning armor. This plaque captures her at the height of her syncretic power, blending maternal benevolence with warrior fierceness. The pomegranate she grasps isn't just about fertility. In Zoroastrian eschatology, it represented the seeds of resurrection, linking her to the afterlife. Yet the most tantalizing detail might be the vessel in her hand. Its shape matches actual Achaemenid ritual bowls found in temple hoards, suggesting artisans worked from standardized sacred blueprints. And here's the mystery. Some plaques show the vessel empty, while others, like this one, depict streams flowing. Were these differences regional variations, or did they reflect seasonal rituals, dry in drought, full during rains? The answer may lie in the cuneiform inscriptions framing the plaque's edges, now too eroded to read fully. Today, this golden sliver offers more than artistic admiration. It invites us into a world where nature and divinity weren't separate but intimately entwined. When a Persian noble fastened this plaque over their heart, they weren't just wearing art. They were carrying a prayer that, like Anahita's waters, life's essence would forever flow, purify, and renew. And in that fragile hope pressed into gold 3,000 years ago, we recognize a yearning as human now as it was then. Deep in the frozen tombs of Siberia's Altai Mountains, where ice preserved the dead for over 2,500 years, archaeologists uncovered something unexpected: a carpet. Not just any carpet, but a masterpiece of wool and dye so perfectly intact that its crimson horses still gallop across a field of gold as vividly as the day they were woven. Known as the Pazyryk carpet, this 3-foot by 6-foot marvel shouldn't exist. The acidic soils and extreme temperatures of most ancient burial sites destroyed textiles within centuries. Yet here, nestled beside a Scythian chieftain's mummified remains, lay the world's oldest surviving pile carpet, a Persian heirloom found 1,500 miles from its homeland. The craftsmanship defies time. Each square inch contains over 200 hand-tied knots, a density rivaling modern rugs. The dyes, made from madder root, indigo, and even crushed insects, retain their jewel-like brilliance, proof of Persian mastery of organic chemistry. But the real astonishment lies in the design. At the center, a star-burst medallion radiates precision geometry, surrounded by concentric borders teeming with life. Stags graze beside griffins, Persian horsemen chase ibexes, and along the outermost edge, a procession of elk moves with such fluidity they seem to stride off the wool. This wasn't just floor covering, it was a portable work of art, likely commissioned by nobility for a palace or temple. How did this Persian treasure end up in a Scythian grave? The answer reveals a shadow history of cultural exchange along the Silk Road's precursor routes. The Scythians, nomadic horsemen feared from Greece to China, weren't just raiders. They were prolific traders who prized Persian luxury goods. Some scholars believe the carpet was a diplomatic gift, perhaps exchanged for Central Asian horses that strengthened Persia's cavalry. Others speculate it was war spoils from a raid into Achaemenid territory. The truth may lie in the tomb itself. Among the chieftain's grave goods were Persian-style bridles and a ceremonial axe resembling those carried by Darius's royal guards, suggesting an alliance, or at least mutual admiration between these rival peoples. Modern weavers still puzzle over the techniques behind the carpet's creation. The symmetrical knots, identical front and back, indicate use of an advanced loom, possibly vertical for such intricate work. Yet no remnants of such looms survive from this era. Even more perplexing are the colors. The blues and reds show no fading despite millennia buried in alternating freeze-thaw cycles, a testament to some lost modern technique that bonded dye to wool at the molecular level. When conservators first unfurled the carpet in 1949, they found strands of silk mixed with the wool, an impossibly rare material at the time, hinting at connections to even more distant lands. Beyond its artistry, the Persian carpet forces us to rethink ancient borders. Its motifs, griffins from Assyrian myth, elk from Siberian shamanism, floral patterns echoing Zoroastrian tree of life symbolism form a visual dialect of shared beliefs across empires. That a nomadic warrior chose this as his eternal companion speaks volumes. In death, surrounded by weapons and gold, he clung to something that outshone both, the warmth and wonder of Persian hands transforming threads into eternity. Today, displayed in St. Petersburg's Hermitage Museum, the carpet's survival reminds us that true luxury isn't just richness, it's resilience. And perhaps that's why after 25 centuries, we still lean closer, half expecting those woven horses to leap right off the loom and carry us back to a world more connected than we ever imagined. Discovered in 1972 near the ruins of an ancient Persian outpost in Egypt, the statue of Darius I stands as a masterclass in imperial propaganda, carved not from local stone, but from shimmering greywacke shipped all the way from quarries in Iran. This life-sized portrait shows the great king in perfect stillness, one hand clutching a scepter, the other resting on a hieroglyph-inscribed pillar that shouldn't exist. Because here's the puzzle, Darius wasn't Egyptian. He ruled from Persepolis over 2,000 miles away, yet his statue wears the traditional shendit kilt of pharaohs, the double crown of Upper and Lower Egypt perched confidently on his head. This wasn't just art, it was a calculated declaration that Persia's reach could reshape even the oldest identities. The inscriptions tell a story in 3 languages: Old Persian, Elamite, and Egyptian hieroglyphs, each tailored to its audience. The Persian text focuses on Darius's lineage, tracing his right to rule back through Achaemenid bloodlines. The hieroglyphs, however, make a breathtaking claim. They place Darius among the gods, describing him as beloved of Ra, chosen of Ammon. For a foreign conqueror to claim divine endorsement in Egypt was audacious, but Darius went further. Scenes along the statue's base show him in classic pharaonic poses smiting enemies, making offerings to Isis as if he'd been born along the Nile. What's missing speaks volumes too. Unlike Persian reliefs showing subject nations bringing tribute, these carvings depict Egyptian deities blessing Darius, framing conquest as cosmic inevitability rather than military victory. But the real genius lies in the statue's hybrid design. Darius's face bears the almond eyes and curled beard of Persian royalty, yet his posture mirrors statues of Ramses II. The pillar he grasps lists Egypt's traditional provinces alongside new Persian administrative districts, a visual merger of old and new orders. Even the material was a message. Greywacke, extremely rare in Egypt, signaled that Darius commanded resources beyond mortal reach. Some scholars believe the statue once stood in a temple at Heliopolis, where Egyptian priests would have recognized another layer of symbolism. Greywacke was sacred to Anubis, the god who weighed souls against truth. Was Darius implying his rule itself was divine judgment? The mystery deepens when we ask why this statue survived when so many Persian monuments in Egypt were destroyed. After Darius's death, revolt scrubbed his name from countless inscriptions, yet here, his likeness remained untouched. Perhaps the local priests, grateful for his restoration of their temples, hid it. Or maybe the sheer craftsmanship stayed rebel hands. There's even a theory that later Ptolemaic rulers kept it as a template for their own multicultural propaganda. Whatever the reason, the statue's survival gives us an unparalleled glimpse into how empires engineer loyalty. Darius understood that to rule Egypt, he had to become Egypt, at least in stone. Today, the statue resides in the National Museum of Iran, its Egyptian crown slightly chipped but its message intact. When you stand before it, you're not just seeing a king. You're seeing the birth of a political idea. That power isn't just taken, it's performed. And perhaps that's why, millennia later, those silent stone lips still seem to whisper a lesson every ruler learns eventually. Conquest is fleeting, but the stories we carve in stone, those can outlast dynasties. Emerging from the ashes of a crumbling temple in western Iran, the silver griffin head is no ordinary relic. It's a frozen snarl of myth and metal. Crafted from hammered silver with eyes once inlaid with lapis lazuli, this creature's hollow neck suggests it once crowned a ceremonial staff or adorned the prow of a royal chariot. The craftsmanship is staggering. Every feather on its arched wings is individually chased, the beak slightly parted as if caught mid-screech. But this isn't just art, it's a hybrid enigma, blending the body of a lion with the wings and talons of an eagle, a symbol of divine power that transcended cultures from Persia to the Mediterranean. What makes this artifact extraordinary is how it embodies Persia's spiritual imagination. In Zoroastrian cosmology, griffins weren't mere decorations, they were protectors of the tree of life, tasked with keeping darkness at bay. The silver's reflective surface would have shimmered like moonlight during night rituals, turning the creature into a living conduit between earth and sky. Some scholars believe such staffs were carried by magi during Nowruz celebrations, their rhythmic movements mimicking the griffin's flight to invoke cosmic order. Others point to its military significance. Xenophon wrote of Persian commanders bearing griffin standards, their presence on battlefields meant to channel the creature's ferocity. The metallurgy tells its own story. Unlike Greek or Scythian griffins rendered in gold, this silver construction reflects a uniquely Persian hierarchy of materials. Silver symbolized the moon in Zoroastrianism, a celestial counterpart to the sun's gold, and was associated with the feminine divine. Intriguingly, the head's interior shows traces of aromatic resin, suggesting it once held sacred herbs burned during ceremonies. This wasn't just a symbol, it was a functioning ritual object, its gaping mouth possibly designed to release fragrant smoke, as if the griffin itself were breathing divinity into the air. Yet the artifact's discovery site raises tantalizing questions. Found near Apadana, a city renowned for its treasure vaults, this griffin lay beside broken glass vessels marked with cuneiform numbers. Were these inventory tags from a royal storeroom, a votive pit where sacred objects were ritually killed? The most compelling clue might be the wear patterns. Unlike battle standards that show handling marks, this griffin's wingtips are polished smooth from repeated touches, perhaps by generations of priests anointing it with holy water or pilgrims seeking blessings. Today, the silver griffin head sits silently in Tehran's National Museum, its empty eye sockets still watching across millennia. But if you lean close, you can almost hear the echoes of its original purpose, the chanting of Mobad priests, the hiss of incense meeting hot metal, the gasp of initiates seeing moonlight ignite those silver feathers into something alive. This wasn't just a depiction of a mythical guardian. For the Persians who crafted it, the griffin was real, a truth hammered into being by faith, artistry, and the unshakable belief that some creatures exist not in flesh but in the space between worlds. Carved into the sheer rock face of Mount Alvand near Hamadan, the Ganjname inscriptions loom over visitors like a royal decree frozen in stone. Picture standing before these towering panels, each nearly 10 feet tall, where the very words of kings Darius the Great and Xerxes I have echoed for over 2,500 years. Unlike the grandiose reliefs of Persepolis, these texts are stark in their simplicity. No triumphant battle scenes, no divine symbols, just meticulously chiseled cuneiform characters marching across polished stone in 3 languages: Old Persian, Elamite, and Babylonian. But don't let their austerity fool you. These aren't just ancient graffiti, they're bulletins from the apex of an empire, strategically placed along the royal road where every traveler would see them. The message itself reads like a resume of divine kingship. Darius's panel, carved around 500 BCE, declares his lineage, his righteousness, and most intriguingly, his gratitude to Ahura Mazda for granting him wisdom to govern justly. Xerxes' inscription, added later beside his father's, mirrors this formula, but with a telling addition. He emphasizes his role as protector of sacred fire temples, a nod to Zoroastrianism's growing influence. What's remarkable is their tone. While other conquerors boasted of territorial gains, these texts focus on moral authority, portraying Persian rule as a cosmic obligation rather than mere ambition. That's no accident. Placed near Ecbatana, the summer capital, they welcomed diplomats and merchants entering Persia's heartland, subtly reinforcing why rebellion wasn't just treason, it was sacrilege. Decoding the name, Ganjname, meaning treasure book, reveals another layer. Local legend claimed the inscriptions held clues to hidden Achaemenid gold, leading generations to chip at the rocks in futile searches. The real treasure, though, was linguistic. When 19th-century scholars like Henry Rawlinson studied these parallel texts, they noticed something groundbreaking. The Old Persian segments followed a consistent grammatical structure, acting like a cipher for the more complex Babylonian and Elamite scripts. This became the Rosetta Stone of cuneiform, unlocking entire civilizations' records. That humble roadside monument, it accidentally preserved the key to reconstructing ancient Mesopotamia. Yet the inscriptions guard quieter mysteries. Notice the weathering patterns. Darius's panel is significantly more eroded, suggesting it stood exposed decades before Xerxes added his. Was this a son's tribute or political theater reinforcing dynastic continuity? Even the location whispers secrets. The site overlooks the Abbassabad Valley, where natural rock formations amplify sound. Some scholars believe priests may have chanted the inscriptions during ceremonies, their voices bouncing off the cliffs to simulate divine echoes. Today, visitors can still trace the grooves of those ancient letters, each stroke a testament to bureaucracy's enduring power. Because that's what these really were, the linked-in profile of empire, a stone-cut press release meant to outlast papyrus and memory, and perhaps that's their lasting lesson. While Darius and Xerxes built palaces and waged wars, their most lasting legacy might be these unadorned words on a mountainside, proving that real influence isn't just about monuments. It's about making sure your story, and only your story, gets carved into the bedrock of history. Buried beneath a lonely hilltop in northwestern Iran, the Ziwi hoard is more than just treasure. It's a cultural thunderclap frozen in gold. Discovered in the 1940s by a shepherd whose flock kicked loose a glint of metal, this collection of over 1,000 objects reads like a manifesto of ancient globalization. Picture a crouching golden ibex with lapis lazuli eyes, its curved horns tipped with tiny bells that would have chimed with every movement, or a silver belt clasp showing a hero grappling lions, its style echoing Assyrian palace reliefs yet executed with a distinctly Persian flair. Each piece seems to whisper the same question: where does one empire end and another begin? The hoard's diversity is staggering. Alongside Achaemenid-style gold armbands sit delicate ivory carvings of Egyptian deities, their hieroglyphs mingling with cuneiform inscriptions. A single silver rhyton might bear the snarling head of a Mesopotamian lamashu, while its body twists into a form perfected by Persian metalsmiths. Even the materials tell a story of connections: gold from the Oxus River region, turquoise from Khorasan, amber that likely traveled Baltic trade routes. This wasn't just wealth, it was a physical manifestation of the crossroads Persia occupied, where artistic traditions collided and fused into something entirely new. Scholars still spar over who buried these riches. The prevailing theory points to the Manneans, a little-known kingdom caught between Urartu and Assyria, who may have hidden the hoard during 7th century BCE invasions. Others argue the eclectic mix suggests a Scythian warlord's plunder, while metallurgical analysis reveals some items were repaired multiple times before burial, hinting at generations of careful use. The most provocative theory, that this wasn't emergency concealment at all, but a ritual deposit, perhaps even an attempt to spiritually anchor the diverse cultures of the empire against the chaos of war. What makes Ziwi revolutionary is how it upends old notions of cultural purity. A gold pectoral might combine Phoenician granulation techniques with motifs from Zoroastrian cosmology, while a silver cup's hunting scene blends Persian nobility with Elamite weaponry. Even the ibex figurines, long considered quintessentially Persian, show anatomical details borrowed from Siberian shamanic art. This wasn't appropriation, it was alchemy, the moment foreign influences ceased to be foreign and became part of Persia's own artistic language. The hoard's afterlife is equally fascinating. After its accidental discovery, pieces scattered across black markets from Beirut to Geneva before scholars reassembled what remained. Today, seeing these objects together is like watching a dance. Each artifact steps to its own cultural rhythm, yet together they move in perfect harmony. Perhaps that's the real lesson of Ziwi. In an age obsessed with borders and belonging, these gold and silver fragments remind us that the greatest treasures aren't those that fit neatly into categories, but those that force us to redraw the maps altogether. Ascending the grand staircase of Persepolis's Apadana palace, visitors are met with a silent procession frozen in limestone. 23 foreign delegations, carved with such precision that you can count the stitches on a Mede's boots or trace the braids in an Ethiopian's hair. These aren't mere decorations, they're a meticulously choreographed diplomatic ballet, each panel a snapshot of empire in motion. The eastern staircase alone stretches over 300 feet, its walls alive with ambassadors from lands as distant as Libya and India, all captured mid-stride as they ascend toward the king's throne. What makes these reliefs extraordinary isn't just their scale, it's their radical message. Unlike Assyrian carvings showing enemies groveling in chains, here every nation walks with dignity, their gifts held high as offerings rather than tributes. Take the Lydian delegation, their trousers embroidered with intricate patterns as they lead a chariot pulled by 2 stallions, or the Armenians, bundled in wool cloaks against their mountain winters, presenting the prized stallions that made their homeland famous. Even the smallest details carry weight. A Scythian's quiver holds arrows fletched with distinctive triple feathers, a detail corroborated by arrowheads found in Ukrainian burial mounds. The Babylonians' finely pleated robes mirror textiles discovered in Mesopotamian ruins, while the Gandharan delegation's ivory tusks match trade records describing Indian elephant exports. This wasn't fantasy, it was ethnography in stone, a testament to Persian administrators' obsessive record-keeping. The relief's true genius lies in their composition. Notice how no single delegation dominates. Each group occupies equal space, their height standardized to eliminate hierarchy. The artists even used optical illusions. Figures farther from the central throne are slightly larger to appear equidistant when viewed from below. Some scholars believe the carving served as a ceremonial program, guiding real-life processions during Nowruz celebrations. Imagine ambassadors from across the empire physically retracing their stone counterparts' steps, their gifts mirroring those depicted centuries earlier. The reliefs thus became both script and stage, blurring the line between art and ritual, yet mysteries linger. Why are some delegations shown with Persian escorts while others walk alone? One theory suggests the escorted groups represent newly incorporated territories, their handlers signaling imperial oversight. Then there's the curious case of the Sogdians. Their panel was left unfinished, the rough chisel marks hinting at some interrupted diplomatic mission. Most intriguing are the traces of pigment detected in the stone's pores. Digital reconstructions reveal the reliefs were originally riotously colorful, with Egyptians in white linen, Elamites in blue fringes, and the king's canopy gleaming in gold leaf. The effect would have been overwhelming, transforming the staircase into a vibrant map of imperial reach. Today, as sunlight slants across these ancient figures, they offer more than historical data. They're a meditation on how empires see themselves. The absence of warfare imagery, the emphasis on cultural specificity, these choices reveal a Persia confident enough to celebrate difference rather than erase it. And perhaps that's why, millennia later, the Apadana reliefs still resonate. In a world of borders and barriers, they whisper an alternative vision, that power need not homogenize to rule, and that the truest tribute to an empire's might isn't conquest, but the willingness to be remembered as a curator of civilizations. Marching in perfect unison across the palace walls of Susa, the Persian Archer Frieze captures more than just military might. It immortalizes an idea. Imagine 100 life-sized figures, each crafted from vibrant glazed bricks, their yellow robes edged with intricate floral patterns, their quivers strapped with precision across muscled backs. These aren't generic soldiers, they're the Immortals, Persia's legendary 10,000-strong elite guard, so named because their ranks never dwindled. When one fell, another instantly took his place. But what makes these archers extraordinary isn't just their historical significance. It's how they embody the empire's obsession with unity in diversity. Every brick-fired face shares the same serene expression, yet no two patterns on their robes repeat. The message is clear. Discipline harmonizes individuality, creating strength no enemy could fracture. The technical brilliance behind the frieze staggers modern artisans. Each archer required nearly 500 individually molded bricks, their glazes mixed to exact mineral formulas: manganese for purple, cobalt for blue, copper for green, then fired at temperatures so precise that colors remained consistent across decades of production. The result, figures that still gleam 25 centuries later, their cloaks shimmering like sunlight on desert sand, but the real mastery lies in the composition. Unlike static Egyptian wall paintings, these archers stride forward, their slightly bent knees and shifting feet creating the illusion of motion, stand at the right angle, and the entire procession seems to advance toward you, a silent army stepping out of history. Look closer and the symbolism deepens. The archers carry two distinct weapons, a short spear for close combat and a composite bow capable of piercing armor at 300 paces. This duality reflects Persian military doctrine, adaptable, prepared for any threat. Their bows, drawn but not fully taut, suggest readiness rather than aggression, a visual representation of the empire's preferred diplomacy through strength approach. Even their positioning mattered. Originally lining the throne room's eastern wall, they faced toward the rising sun, aligning the king's protectors with the Zoroastrian veneration of light. Yet the frieze afterlife rivals its creation drama. When French archaeologist Marcel de la Foy unearthed fragments in 1885, the bricks were scattered like a giant's jigsaw puzzle across the ruins. Painstakingly reassembled, they now form the crown jewel of the Louvre's Near Eastern collection. Modern imaging reveals something startling: traces of gold leaf once highlighted their jewelry and weaponry, meaning the original display would have glittered blindingly in torchlight. This wasn't decoration, it was psychological theater designed to awe ambassadors with the empire's inexhaustible resources. Most poignant, though, is what the archers don't show. Unlike Assyrian reliefs depicting graphic battle scenes, these figures exude calm control. No enemies writhe beneath their feet, no blood stains their hands. Their power lies in potential, the knowledge that should the king raise a finger, this flawless machine would unleash devastation. In that restraint, we see the essence of Persian imperial art, confident enough to let terror remain imagined, wise enough to understand that true authority doesn't need to scream. And perhaps that's why, millennia later, these silent sentinels still command our gaze, not as relics of war, but as masterpieces of calculated quiet. Tucked away in the ancient city of Hamadan, a modest brick dome rises above the bustling streets, a sight that bridges scripture and history in a single whispered legend. The Tomb of Esther and Mordecai stands as one of Iran's most sacred Jewish pilgrimage sites, its weathered walls guarding a story that's equal parts faith, politics, and mystery. According to tradition, this is where Queen Esther, the Jewish heroine who saved her people from Persian persecution, lies beside her cousin Mordechai, their final resting place a quiet rebuke to the very empire that once sought to erase them. But step inside and the questions multiply. Why does this shrine bear such striking resemblance to Parthian-era fire temples? And how did a biblical tale set in Susa become anchored 800 years later in Hamadan? The tomb's architecture is the first clue to its layered past. The current structure dates to the 14th century, but its foundations likely reach back to the Sasanian era. The dome's double shell design, a technique perfected by Persian engineers, echoes Zoroastrian funerary traditions, while Hebrew inscriptions mingle with Persian floral motifs on the interior plasterwork. Even the sarcophagi tell a story. Carved from solid oak, their surfaces are etched with geometric patterns found in both synagogue textiles and Achaemenid palace reliefs. This isn't just a Jewish shrine, it's a cultural palimpsest where identities overlap like the pages of an ancient manuscript. Historical records add another layer of intrigue. While the Book of Esther places her story in Susa during Xerxes' reign, medieval Persian Jews fiercely believed Hamadan was ancient Susa. Some scholars argue this wasn't confusion, but deliberate reinterpretation, a way to center their narrative in a city that remained a thriving Jewish enclave long after the Babylonian exile. The tomb's prominence peaked in the 12th century when Jewish traveler Benjamin of Tudela described it as a site of miracles, where pilgrims lit lamps that supposedly burned without oil. Yet Islamic sources from the same period call it the burial place of Shushan-Dokht, a Jewish queen said to have married the Sasanian king Yazdijerd I. Are these competing legends or fractured pieces of the same oral tradition? The site's survival through centuries of upheaval is itself a testament to Persian-Jewish symbiosis. Even during the Safavid dynasty's forced conversions, local Muslims protected the tomb, referring to Esther as Seter, a Persian name meaning star. Today, the quiet courtyard still sees Jewish pilgrims pressing prayer notes into the tomb's wooden lattice, while Muslim caretakers maintain the grounds with equal reverence. That duality might be the real miracle here, not just a biblical queen's enduring legacy, but how her story became a shared inheritance in the land where it unfolded. And perhaps that's the tomb's greatest lesson. Whether Esther truly rests here matters less than what her presence represents, a flicker of resilience in the face of empire, a reminder that even the mightiest rulers answer to history's quieter voices. As sunlight filters through the stained glass Star of David onto the worn sarcophagi, you can almost hear the whispers of all who have come before, not just to mourn or pray, but to touch a story that refuses to be buried. In the dimly lit back rooms of 19th century Tehran's bazaars, a clandestine art form flourished, not to preserve history but to invent it. The Qajar-era forgeries rank among history's most audacious deceptions, a collection of ancient artifacts so meticulously crafted that they duped museums and scholars for decades. Take the infamous Crown of Cyrus, a dazzling gold headpiece adorned with mythical beasts and inscribed with cuneiform proclaiming it the royal diadem of Persia's founding king. Sold to European collectors in 1868 as a priceless relic, it was later revealed to be the work of a gifted Qajar metalsmith who combined genuine Achaemenid motifs with sheer creative bravado. These weren't crude fakes, they were masterclasses in historical mimicry, woven from equal parts technical skill and psychological cunning. What makes these forgeries fascinating isn't just their craftsmanship, it's why they worked so well. Qajar artisans had access to newly excavated Achaemenid and Sasanian sites, studying authentic pieces down to the patina patterns and corrosion marks. A forged silver rhyton might be buried in manure for months to replicate ancient tarnish, while discovered clay tablets were baked in kilns at precise temperatures to mimic millennia of aging. The most sophisticated examples even included deliberate errors, misplaced cuneiform strokes, or anachronistic symbols to feign the imperfections of genuine antiquities. This attention to detail exploited a growing European obsession with Orientalist treasures, where wealthy collectors prized exotic provenance over rigorous verification. The controversy surrounding these objects still ripples through academia. When the British Museum acquired a Sasanian gold plaque in 1892, its intricate depiction of the goddess Anahita was celebrated as a landmark find, until X-rays revealed 19th-century solder beneath the gilding. Similar scandals erupted over Ancient Cylinder seals later traced to a single shahr-e workshop. Yet some scholars argue these forgeries deserve study in their own right. The shahr-e bowls, ostensibly depicting scenes from Ferdowsi's epic, blend Safavid miniature styles with Art Nouveau flourishes, creating a hybrid art form that reflects Qajar Iran's cultural crossroads. Beneath the debates lies a poignant irony. Many forgers were traditional craftsmen whose legitimate work was undervalued as Persia modernized. Creating antiquities became a survival strategy, their artistry funneled into deception because contemporary buyers only cherished the old. Today, museums quietly display some Qajar forgeries with dual labels exposing the fraud while honoring the skill behind it. These objects ultimately hold up a mirror to the antiquities trade itself. They challenge our assumptions about authenticity, value, and who gets to write history, or in this case, rewrite it. After all, isn't every artifact, real or forged, someone's version of the past? Deep in the rugged valleys of western Iran's Lorestan province, a trove of bronze artifacts emerged in the 1920s that would rewrite assumptions about ancient craftsmanship, the Lorestan bronzes. Unlike the monumental stone carvings of Persepolis or gleaming gold of the Oxus Treasure, these pieces carry a raw, almost primal energy. Picture fierce little ibexes rearing up as dagger hilts, votive stands crowned with mythical beasts, and chariot fittings shaped like roaring lions, each piece hammered and cast with startling vitality. What makes these artifacts extraordinary isn't just their artistry. It's how they embody a culture that thrived in the shadows of empires, leaving behind no written records, only these mysterious metal whispers. The bronzes fall into three puzzling categories. First, the infamous idol stands tall, spiked bases topped with figures of deities or animals, possibly used to hold ritual objects or as ceremonial standards. Then there are the weapons, axes with blades shaped like crescent moons, their sockets adorned with entwined serpents or leaping gazelles. Most enigmatic are the Master of Animals plaques, showing a central figure gripping two rampant beasts by their throats, a motif echoing Mesopotamian and Elamite art, yet executed with a distinctive Lorestani flair. The details are hypnotic. On a belt clasp no wider than your palm, you might find a dozen tiny warriors in relief, their spears raised in perfect unison. Dating these pieces is like assembling a puzzle with half the pieces missing. Stylistic clues suggest they were crafted between 1000 and 600 BCE, but without inscriptions or intact burial sites, scholars rely on metallurgical fingerprints. The alloy mixes arsenic with copper, a technique predating widespread tin bronze in the region, while traces of alpine minerals hint at trade networks stretching into the Caucasus. Some exhibit lost wax, casting so refined that modern artisans struggle to replicate it, especially the hollow figures with moving parts, like a horse chariot spinning wheels. Their purpose sparks fiercer debates. Early archaeologists assumed they belonged to nomadic Lorestan culture warriors, but recent finds challenge this. At Cirque-Dum, a site revealing over 1,000 bronzes, excavators uncovered them alongside temple remains and fire altars. This suggests the objects weren't just weapons or ornaments. They were sacred implements, perhaps used in rites honoring a pantheon lost to time. The recurring ibex motifs might link to a horned god of fertility, while the Master of Animals could depict a shaman mediating between realms. One chilling theory posits that some dagger handles, shaped like skeletal figures, served as psychopomps, guides for souls crossing into the afterlife. The bronze's afterlife is equally dramatic. Plundered from graves by looters in the early 20th century, most entered the black market before scholars could document their original context. Museums now guard pieces like the Louvre's famed Standing God, his elongated body coiled with snakes, but countless others remain in private collections, their secrets scattered. Modern laser scans reveal hidden layers of votive stand's interior cavity contains residue of burnt hemp, while a horse-bit's mouthpiece bears microscopic teeth marks from some long-dead steed. Standing before these bronzes today, you sense their creator's worldview, a place where every weapon held magic, every chariot pin channeled divine protection, and the line between beast and deity blurred into molten bronze. They remind us that history isn't just written by empires with monuments sometimes, it's hammered out by mountain tribes who left no names, only masterpieces that refused to be silent. Carved into the living rock of a mountainside near Kermanshah, the tacky Behistun reliefs burst with a vitality that defies their 1400 years. Unlike the stern formality of Achaemenid carvings, these Sasanian masterpieces from the 4th to 7th centuries CE pulse with movement, kings galloping on horseback, boars fleeing through reeds, and divine figures hovering just beyond the mortal realm. The largest alcove shows King Khosrow II astride his armored warhorse Shabdas, both man and beast so meticulously detailed you can count the chainmail rings on the steed's flanks. This isn't just royal propaganda, it's a window into a culture that saw hunting as sacred theater, where the chase mirrored cosmic battles between light and darkness. Step closer to the famous boar hunt panel and the storytelling dazzles. The king's bowstring is drawn taut mid-shot, while below him, elephants trumpet as beaters drive startled swine into marshes thick with chiseled reeds. Every element serves dual purposes. The scene glorifies royal skill while subtly reinforcing Zoroastrian themes of order triumphing over chaos. Even the materials whisper secrets. The grotto's natural overhang protected the reliefs from erosion, preserving traces of original pigments that hint at a spectacle once as colorful as a Persian miniature, lapis blues for the water, cinnabar reds for royal garments, and gold leaf that would have made divine halos shimmer in torchlight. The coronation scenes unveil deeper mysteries. In one niche, the Zoroastrian god Ahura Mazda and water goddess Anahita flank King Ardashir II, handing him the ring of kingship. But notice Anahita's posture. She stands equal in height to Ahura Mazda, a radical departure from earlier depictions where female deities were subordinate. Some scholars see this as evidence of her cult's resurgence under the Sasanians, while others interpret it as political messaging about royal legitimacy through divine femininity. The most tantalizing detail, the faint outline of a discarded figure beneath Ardashir, likely a usurped predecessor literally carved out of history. What truly sets tacky Behistun apart is its fluid blending of sacred and secular. The smaller investiture grotto shows King Shapur III standing stiffly between two courtiers, his robes a masterclass in stone drapery that seems to ripple with his breath. Yet above him, celestial beings float in a symbolic fusion of earthly power and heavenly mandate. This duality extends to the site's acoustics. Stand beneath the main arch during sunset, and the rock walls amplify whispers into echoes, suggesting rituals where voices from the divine realm might have answered priests. Modern conservators face a silent battle against more than time. The relief's lower sections show pockmarks from 20th century rifle practice, while air pollution etches new scars into the soft limestone. Yet even wounded, these carvings retain their power. When sunlight slants through the arch at noon, Shapur's mounted figure casts a shadow that stretches across the reflecting pool below, a ghostly rider eternally charging between worlds. That's the genius of Sasanian art. It doesn't just depict kings, it makes stone breathe with the spirits they sought to harness and the gods they hoped to become. In the scorching deserts of southeastern Iran, an accidental discovery shook the foundations of Near Eastern archaeology. The Juroft artifacts, Picture a farmer digging an irrigation channel in 2001 when his shovel strikes something harder than earth, revealing a slab of greenish stone carved with intricate serpentine patterns. What emerged from the soil were thousands of chlorite vessels, their surfaces alive with entwined scorpions, date palms, and heroic figures battling mythical beasts. These weren't crude pots, but masterpieces of lapidary art, their precise drill holes and relief work suggesting a lost civilization operating at Mesopotamia's level, but with a style entirely its own. The controversy ignited immediately. Local archaeologists claimed the artifacts dated back to the 3rd millennium BCE, predating even Sumer's royal tombs at Ur. If true, this would reposition Juroft as the possible source of Aratta, a fabled wealthy kingdom mentioned in Mesopotamian texts but never conclusively located. But skeptics pointed to the lack of controlled excavations. Most pieces surfaced via looting, their context destroyed. Without stratified layers or associated carbon-datable materials, dating relied heavily on stylistic comparisons, a method vulnerable to bias. The debate grew heated when inscriptions allegedly found at the site were dismissed as modern forgeries, their cuneiform mixing elements from different eras like a historical collage. Yet the artistry defies easy dismissal. Chlorite, a soft stone requiring meticulous carving, appears in Juroft works with unprecedented sophistication. Vessels depict complex narratives, eagle-headed heroes subduing lions, temples with stepped facades reminiscent of ziggurats, even what might be early depictions of the Tree of Life. Some motifs clearly influenced Mesopotamian and Indus Valley art, while others, like the recurring two-horned deities, appear nowhere else. Metallurgical analysis added fuel to the mystery. Trace elements in a silver bowl matched ore deposits from 300 miles away, proving wide-ranging trade networks existed long before documented history suggests. The most compelling evidence might lie in the ruins themselves. Before being sealed off, the Juroft site revealed a massive buried structure with mud brick walls 16 feet thick, possibly a temple or palace, and a sophisticated water management system of channels and reservoirs. Pottery shards found embedded in the walls bore geometric designs matching those on the chlorite vessels, hinting at cultural continuity. But with 90% of the site reportedly looted before proper excavation, crucial context vanished forever, leaving scholars to piece together a jigsaw with most pieces missing. What remains undeniable is how these artifacts challenge textbook narratives. If Juroft's dating holds, it suggests urban civilization bloomed simultaneously across multiple regions, not radiating from Mesopotamia as previously assumed. The chlorite vessel's widespread distribution from the Gulf to Syria implies a cultural influence rivaling Egypt or Sumer. Yet without deciphered texts or intact royal tombs, Juroft remains a tantalizing question mark. Perhaps the real lesson lies in the artifacts themselves. In their swirling designs, we see a people who transformed stone into poetry, whose artisans could make chlorite mimic woven basketry or flowing water. They may not have left written records, but their hands spoke eloquently across millennia, carving not just images but a plea to be remembered. And in that, at least, they succeeded, because whether Juroft was a forgotten cradle of civilization or a brilliant provincial culture, its art demands we reconsider history's map, leaving room for mysteries still waiting beneath the desert skin. Imagine a world where every market from the Nile Delta to the Indus River used mismatched lumps of silver, hacked into uneven chunks by merchants' knives until one king decided money should speak a universal language. Enter Darius I's revolutionary invention, the daric. This wasn't just Persia's first official coinage, it was an economic manifesto stamped in gold. Each gleaming disc, barely larger than a fingernail, bore the same image: a robed archer, likely the king himself, kneeling with bow and spear. No face, no name, just pure symbolic authority. The message was clear: trust this not because of whose head it bears, but because the empire stands behind it. The genius lay in the details. Struck from consistent 95% pure gold, derricks maintained uniform weight down to the grain, 8.4 grams, precise enough that merchants could trade them across continents without scales. The reverse side's crude punch mark, once thought primitive, actually served as an anti-counterfeiting measure. Only imperial mints possessed the dyes to create that distinctive sunken impression. But the real innovation was scalability. Satellite mints from Sardis to Babylon produced identical coins, their output so vast that Greek historians complained of Persian gold raining down to corrupt their politicians. Darius didn't stop at gold. His silver sigloi, worth 1/20th of a derrick, became the empire's workhorse currency. Unlike the Lydian coins that inspired them, these weren't just for elite transactions. Even a day's wages for a laborer could be paid in sigloi, democratizing money in ways unprecedented for the ancient world. Excavated hoards reveal their staggering reach. Sigloi appear in Egyptian farmsteads, Scythian burial mounds, and even sunken Phoenician ships, often worn smooth from decades of hands passing them along trade routes. Yet the coin's true brilliance was psychological. Earlier civilizations like Egypt had operated on bulk commodity systems, measures of grain for wide jars of oil. The derrick introduced abstract value. A gold disc could buy anything precisely because everyone agreed it could. This mental leap greased the wheels of Persia's bureaucracy. Taxes calculated in derricks could be collected uniformly from Babylon to Bactria, then redistributed as standardized payments to soldiers and officials. Suddenly, the empire ran on numbers rather than barter, a system so efficient that Alexander the Great kept it intact after conquering Persia. The artistry concealed deeper propaganda. That kneeling archer, most scholars now believe it represents Zoroastrian divine glory Varina, radiating from a king who's both warrior and servant. The absence of facial features wasn't oversight. It transformed the coins into blank slates where subjects could project their own vision of imperial power. Even the lack of denomination spoke volumes. By making value intrinsic rather than stated, Darius implied his currency's worth was as unquestionable as sunrise. Modern metallurgy exposes another layer of sophistication. Neutron activation analysis shows derrick gold came exclusively from the empire's richest mines, while sigloi silver sources shifted strategically, likely to stabilize regional economies. Some later issues even contain trace copper, possibly an early form of inflation control during wartime. These weren't mere tokens, they were macroeconomic tools wielded with surprising subtlety. But the ultimate testament to their success, imitation. Greek city-states copied the derrick's weight standard for their own coins. Phoenician traders used sigloi as reference weights, and Judean texts refer to darkonim as shorthand for all gold currency. Long after Persia fell, these little sons of stamped metal outlived their creators, proving that the most enduring conquests aren't always by sword, sometimes they're by mint. Gleaming in the torchlight of a Sasanian banquet hall, silver plates served a purpose far beyond holding food. They were propaganda in polished metal. Picture a king frozen mid-chase on one such dish, his horse's hooves suspended above a writhing lion, every muscle and tassel rendered with such precision that you can almost hear the hunt's chaos. These weren't mere tableware, they were portable monuments circulating images of royal power to elites across an empire stretching from the Euphrates to the Indus. The British Museum's famed Shahr-e Roman II plate epitomizes this art form, its central scene showing the king effortlessly spearing a leopard while attendants kneel in perfect symmetry, a visual symphony of dominance and order. What sets these plates apart is their layered storytelling. The hunt scenes aren't documentary but cosmic allegories. When Shapur or Khosrow triumphs over beasts, he's reenacting the Zoroastrian struggle of Ahura Mazda against chaos, with the king as earthly enforcer of divine will. Even the compositions whisper ideology. Notice how the monarch always occupies the plate's exact center, radiating power like the sun, while defeated animals spiral outward, a deliberate echo of Sasanian cosmology. The metallic sheen itself played a role. Silver symbolized purity in Zoroastrianism, transforming each meal into a ritual reaffirming the ruler's sacred mandate. The craftsmanship borders on alchemy. Using a technique called raising, artisans hammered single sheets of silver from the reverse to create intricate reliefs without weakening the metal. Gilding highlights royal regalia, while delicate niello inlay, a black alloy of sulfur and silver, accents weaponry and animal fur, creating dramatic contrasts that would have flashed dramatically in firelight. Some plates bear microscopic punch marks indicating royal workshop origins, while others, slightly cruder, were likely provincial copies for lesser nobles desperate to emulate courtly prestige. Yet the plates guard intriguing contradictions. While ostensibly celebrating royal prowess, some feature hidden subversions. On one example, a lion's claw surreptitiously grazes the king's thigh, a subtle nod to mortality beneath the bravado. Others show defeated beasts with almost sympathetic vitality, their agony rendered so vividly that modern viewers debate whether these were covert critiques by artists forced to glorify regimes they feared. The silver's reflective surface adds another dimension. As diners peered at their own faces superimposed over royal images, did they see subjects or aspirants to power? Their afterlife proves equally fascinating. Many plates were deliberately defaced, eyes gouged out, figures scratched, likely by early Islamic conquerors symbolically breaking Sasanian idols. Others were carefully buried, like the famed Harsan hoard discovered in western Iran, where 16 plates were stacked with ceremonial care, possibly hidden during the Arab invasions. Today, these battered survivors challenge our assumptions. The very act of collecting and displaying them in museums continues their original purpose, carrying images of kings into new eras, ensuring their stories outlast not just enemies but empires themselves. Perhaps that's the ultimate irony of these silver canvases. Created to exalt transient power, they ended up preserving something far more enduring. The human tension between awe and rebellion, between the stories rulers tell and the truths artists can't help but reveal. When you see one glinting behind glass, remember, it was made to reflect firelight but ended up reflecting history itself. In the scorching deserts of eastern Iran, the ruins of shahr-e, literally the burnt city, rise from the dust like a puzzle scorched by time. This Bronze Age metropolis thrived between 3200 and 2300 BCE, a bustling hub of trade and innovation that met a fiery, mysterious end. But what truly sets it apart aren't just the ruins, it's the artifacts that survived the flames. Among them, two discoveries shatter our assumptions about ancient medicine: the world's oldest prosthetic eye and skulls bearing the unmistakable marks of early brain surgery. The eye, found in 2006, stares back across millennia with eerie realism. Crafted from lightweight bitumen paste mixed with animal fat, its surface is delicately scratched with radiating lines to mimic a human iris, while tiny gold wires once held it in place within the socket of a woman's skull, likely a priestess or noblewoman. Forensic analysis revealed something haunting. The socket showed significant bone erosion, proving she'd worn this artificial eye for years, her body slowly reshaping around it. But here's what's revolutionary: this wasn't just cosmetic. The opposite orbit had developed asymmetrical stress fractures, suggesting her brain had actually recalibrated depth perception to accommodate the prosthetic. This wasn't primitive medicine, it was bioengineering millennia ahead of its time. Then there's the skulls. Multiple crania excavated from the city's necropolis show precise, healed trepanation holes, surgical openings drilled or scraped into the bone. One specimen is particularly chilling: a 12-year-old girl's skull with a neat rectangular incision near the parietal lobe, its edges smoothed by regrowth. She survived the procedure long enough for bone to begin mending, a feat almost unimaginable in an era without antiseptics or anesthesia. Even more telling, the location. This wasn't the frontal lobe where many ancient cultures performed ritual trepanation to release evil spirits. The precision suggests the surgeons were targeting something specific, perhaps seizures or intracranial pressure. But shahr-e medical prowess is just one thread in a larger tapestry. A clay goblet found in a merchant's quarters bears the earliest known animation, a leaping goat painted in sequential frames that seem to move when spun. A stone weight carved like a woolly mammoth hints at trade links stretching to Siberia, while a backgammon-like game board with 60 pieces reveals a society that valued strategy and leisure. Most poignant are the pottery shards inscribed with an undeciphered script, possibly the world's earliest sign of a writing system that emerged independently of Mesopotamia. The city's abrupt demise around 2300 BCE adds another layer of mystery. Archaeological strata show streets suddenly choked with ash, yet no signs of invasion or massacre. Some theorize climate shift dried up the Helmand River, while others point to traces of massive copper smelting that might have caused ecological collapse. Whatever the cause, the burnt city's legacy smolders in its artifacts, proof that innovation isn't the exclusive domain of so-called great civilizations. Here, in this forgotten corner of Persia, ordinary people redefined what was possible, leaving behind not just objects but questions that still burn bright. The desert winds howl across the ruins of Pasargadae, carrying whispers of a king who vanished twice, once in life and once in death. Cambyses II, son of Cyrus the Great, left behind a legacy as fractured as the empires he conquered. His reign ended in mystery, suicide, assassination, or divine retribution, depending on which ancient historian you ask, but his final resting place remains one of Persia's most stubborn enigmas. Unlike his father's modest yet enduring tomb, Cambyses' burial site has eluded discovery for millennia, sparking theories that range from scholarly debate to Indiana Jones-worthy speculation. Ancient sources offer tantalizing but conflicting clues. Herodotus claims Cambyses died in Syria after a bizarre thigh wound turned gangrenous, his body smuggled back to Persia in secret. Ctesias insists he was buried near Babylon, while a 3rd century CE Sasanian inscription vaguely references a tomb in the land of the Mocha, possibly modern-day Oman. The most compelling lead comes from a cuneiform tablet found at Persepolis, listing funerary offerings delivered to a site called Nupista, a name that appears nowhere else in the archaeological record. For centuries, explorers have combed the dashed Elat salt plains and the Zagros Mountains' hidden valleys, drawn by local legends of a cursed mausoleum guarded by spirits. In the 1800s, British archaeologist Henry Rawlinson believed he'd found Cambyses' tomb near Behistun, a rock-cut chamber later proven to be Sasanian. More recently, satellite imaging revealed an anomalous structure beneath the sands near Pasargadae, its right-angled walls too precise for nature. Yet excavations yielded only Achaemenid-era pottery shards, no burial chamber. Theories about the tomb's potential contents are equally divisive. Some scholars argue Cambyses was interred with the same austere dignity as his father, simple gold accoutrements and a Cyrus-style sarcophagus. Others point to his infamous madness. Herodotus recounts him stabbing sacred Apis bulls and suggest his tomb might hold evidence of neurological disease, perhaps even the mercury-based medicines used to treat his alleged seizures. The wildest hypothesis comes from a fringe group of researchers who believe Cambyses' lost army, 50,000 men swallowed by a sandstorm in Egypt, might have been escorting his embalmed body to a hidden necropolis, their bones and his mummy still lying beneath the dunes of the western desert. What makes this search so electrifying is what it represents: not just a missing grave, but a missing chapter. Cambyses' reign marked Persia's first major crisis of succession, his death triggering the Behistun inscribed revolt of the false Smerdis. Finding his tomb could rewrite our understanding of this pivotal moment. Would it contain Darius the Great's propaganda chiseled onto the walls justifying his coup, or perhaps Cambyses' own version of events etched in silver tablets? Until the desert yields its secret, the tomb of Cambyses remains archaeology's ultimate cold case, a reminder that even empires who carved their histories in stone sometimes buried their truths too deep. And perhaps that's fitting for a king whose life was steeped in shadows, a ruler who conquered Egypt only to vanish without a monument, leaving behind not answers, but an invitation to keep digging. Beneath the sun-scorched deserts of Iran, a hidden network of tunnels stretches like veins across the land, an engineering marvel so advanced that it sustained civilizations for over 3,000 years. The Persian Qanat system isn't just a relic, it's a living testament to human ingenuity, a subterranean labyrinth where water flows silently from mountain aquifers to arid plains without a single pump or watt of electricity. Picture this, a chain of vertical shafts, each one painstakingly dug by hand, descending like staircases into the earth, connected by gently sloping tunnels that guide water across miles with nothing but gravity's pull. These weren't just irrigation ditches, they were the lifeblood of empires, turning barren wastelands into blooming gardens that fed kings and commoners alike. What makes the Qanat revolutionary isn't just its scale. Some stretch over 40 miles, but its elegance. Persian engineers mastered the art of water hunting, reading the land like diviners to trace underground rivers. Starting at the base of mountains, they dug mother wells deep into water tables, then calculated slopes precise enough to maintain flow without erosion. The genius lay in the details. Ventilation shafts prevented stagnation, sediment filters kept water clean, and ceramic linings reduced seepage. In the city of Gonabad, one Qanat still flows after 27 centuries, its water so cold in summer that medieval travelers mistook it for magic. The system's impact rippled far beyond survival. By bringing water to the surface in controlled amounts, Qanats enabled the Persian paradise gardens, those symmetrical oases of cypress trees and roses that inspired everything from Roman villas to Islamic courtyards. Crops like pomegranates and saffron, thirsty plants that would have withered under the desert sun, thrived in their shade, but the real innovation was social. Unlike flood irrigation, which favored wealthy landowners, Qanats were community projects. Villages maintained them through collective labor, and water shares were distributed by time slots etched into stone tablets, some of history's first water rights agreements. Archaeologists have uncovered Qanats beneath the ruins of Pasargadae, their tunnels aligned with Cyrus the Great's palaces, proving they were as vital to Persian urban planning as roads. Even Alexander the Great, no stranger to engineering feats, marveled at these invisible rivers, adopting the technology in Egypt and Central Asia. The spread wasn't incidental. Persian kings actively exported Qanat knowledge, embedding engineers with conquered peoples to transform hostile territories into fertile provinces. It was soft power wielded with pickaxes and plumb lines, yet the Qanat's greatest legacy might be its sustainability. Modern wells, reliant on diesel pumps, have drained aquifers across Iran, but ancient Qanats tapped only renewable seepage. Their gentle flow prevented salinization, and the shaded tunnels lost almost no water to evaporation, a stark contrast to today's open canals that lose up to half their volume to desert air. In Yazd, where temperatures hit 120 degrees, Qanats cooled entire neighborhoods through clever architecture. Homes built over their outlets channeled breezes chilled by the underground water, creating natural air conditioning centuries before the invention of the compressor. Now here's the twist: this Bronze Age technology is making a comeback. As drought strangles the Middle East, UNESCO-listed Qanats are being restored from Morocco to Oman. Solar-powered sensors monitor their flows, while 3D mapping helps locate forgotten branches. In a delicious irony, Western engineers now study these tunnels to solve modern water crises, realizing that the ancients had answers we're just beginning to decode. The Kanat doesn't whisper of a lost past, it roars with relevance, proving that sometimes the most advanced solution isn't the newest but the wisest. Unearthed during a clandestine excavation near modern-day Hamadan in 1968, the Apadana gold tablet gleams with more than just metallic brilliance. It pulses with the whispered politics of a nearly forgotten kingdom. Measuring no larger than a human palm, this hammered rectangle of nearly pure gold bears 11 lines of cuneiform script so finely inscribed that scholars needed magnifiers to discern its secrets. At first glance, it appears to be just another royal decree, but the language sent shockwaves through academic circles. This wasn't Old Persian or Elamite, but Median, the elusive tongue of Cyrus the Great's ancestors. The inscription reveals a proclamation by a king named Apadana, likely a Hellenized rendering of the Median ruler Cyaxares' true title. What's extraordinary isn't just the rarity of Median texts. Only 3 substantial examples exist worldwide, but the tablet's dual function as both legal document and religious artifact. The text declares tax exemptions for priests of the god Mithra, a deity later absorbed into Zoroastrianism, while invoking curses against any who dare reverse the decree. May Ahura Mazda strike down the disobedient with drought and darkness. This blending of fiscal policy and divine threat offers a rare glimpse into how Median rulers consolidated power not just through armies, but by intertwining temple and state. Material science adds another layer of intrigue. Spectrographic analysis traces the gold's origin to the Aladag Mountains near the Black Sea, far beyond traditional Median territory. This suggests either vast trade networks or the spoils of campaigns against the Scythians, whom Herodotus claimed the Medes defeated using gold-laden diplomacy. The tablet's edges show minute-wear patterns, indicating it was likely displayed in a temple niche where priests or petitioners could touch it during oaths, transferring its sacred authority through physical contact. But the real bombshell came in 2014 when digital imaging exposed faint indentations on the reverse side, ghostly traces of an earlier, erased message. Multispectral analysis revealed fragments of a land grant to a military officer, possibly a mercenary captain named Varbazu. Was this recycled tribute a palimpsest of political pragmatism, or evidence of a purged rival's legacy rewritten to serve new loyalties? The tablet's survival is equally mysterious. Most Median artifacts were melted down after Cyrus's conquest, yet this one was carefully buried beneath Ecbatana's royal terrace, possibly hidden by a Mithraic priest during Persia's religious reforms. Today, the tablet sits in Tehran's National Museum, its golden face reflecting not just light, but the paradox of empires, how the victors write history, but the vanquished sometimes slip their truths between the lines. And perhaps that's the real inscription here. That power may forge the official record, but gold, if it waits long enough, always whispers its counter-narrative. Rising like stone sentinels from the cliffs of Fars province, the Sasanian rock reliefs at Naqsh-e Rostam and Naqsh-e Rojab transforms solid limestone into a gallery of divine kingship. These aren't mere carvings, they're cinematic epics frozen in rock, where every chisel stroke served a political and spiritual purpose. Walk the base of Naqsh-e Rostam's towering escarpment, and you're met with 7 monumental panels spanning 4 centuries of imperial propaganda. The earliest shows Ardashir I receiving the ring of kingship from Ahura Mazda himself, their horses trampling the last Parthian ruler, a visual mic drop announcing Persia's revival. Just meters away, Shapur I's victory over 2 Roman emperors unfolds in graphic detail. Valerian kneels in chains while Philip the Arab pleads for mercy, their humiliation preserved for eternity in stone. What makes these reliefs extraordinary isn't just their scale. Some figures stand 15 feet tall, but their layered storytelling. At Naqsh-e Bahram II's family portrait reveals intimate details of court life rarely seen in official art. His queen and child share the spotlight, their presence signaling a shift toward dynastic legitimacy. Notice how the queen's tiara mirrors the king's crown, a subtle nod to the growing influence of the Zoroastrian goddess Anahita. Even the rock face itself was carefully selected. The natural overhangs at both sites protected the carvings from erosion while creating dramatic shadow play during solstices, when sunlight would sequentially illuminate each monarch like divine spotlighting. The technical mastery boggles modern minds. Sasanian artists used a revolutionary, deep relief technique, carving some elements nearly a foot proud of the background to create startling dimensionality. In Shapur's investiture scene, Ahura Mazda's flowing ribbons seem to flutter against the stone, while the folds of the king's trousers reveal intricate embroidery patterns. Archaeologists using 3D scanning discovered tool marks suggesting a multi-stage process, rough outlines pounded with iron chisels, delicate details finished with copper picks dipped in abrasive slurries. The precision is such that chisel grooves on horse bridles match actual Sasanian metalwork found in museums, yet these monuments guard tantalizing mysteries. Why do some panels appear unfinished, like Hormuz II's enigmatic hunting relief at Naqsh-e where the king's face was deliberately left featureless? Some scholars believe it reflects political turmoil, a king deposed before his glorification could be completed. Others point to the curious absence of Kavad I, whose tumultuous reign saw the Mazdakite revolt. Was his memory literally chiseled out of history? The most haunting omission is at Naqsh-e where a small empty niche bears mason's guidelines but no carving, a ghost monument meant for a ruler who never claimed his place in stone. Beyond their historical narrative, the reliefs functioned as ritual spaces. Recent acoustic studies reveal the concave shapes of certain panels amplify specific frequencies, possibly designed to enhance the chanting of Mobad priests during Nowruz ceremonies. The strategic placement along the ancient royal road ensured travelers would pass these imperial billboards, their messages reinforced by oral retellings. Even the spatial relationship to nearby Achaemenid tombs at Naqsh-e was deliberate. By carving their deeds beside Cyrus's descendants, Sasanian kings staked a visual claim to legacy. Today, as the setting sun ignites the reliefs in golden light, they challenge our assumptions about power and permanence. These kings sought immortality through stone, yet their true triumph lies in the artistry itself. The way a Roman emperor's despair still reads in his slumped shoulders after 17 centuries, or how a goddess's outstretched hand seems to hover just beyond mortal reach. They remind us that history isn't just recorded by the victorious. Sometimes it's carved by those who understood that to control the past, you must first master the language of awe. Stretching over 1,600 miles from the Aegean coast to the heart of Persia, the royal road wasn't just a path, it was the internet of its age, pulsing with messengers, merchants, and military dispatches that held an empire together. Unlike the crumbling walls of Persepolis or the glittering treasures of Susa, this infrastructure marvel left few grand monuments. Instead, its legacy lingers in subtle traces, worn stone markers bearing cuneiform numbers, the ghostly outlines of way stations buried beneath modern highways, and even the very routes our GPS still follows today. Consider the milestone of Darius discovered near modern-day Turkey, a weathered block inscribed with distances calculated in parasangs about 3.5 miles, proving the Persians didn't just build roads, they systematized space itself. What set this network apart wasn't its length. Egypt had roads, Babylon had processional ways, but its revolutionary efficiency. Every 15 miles, identical caravanserais offered fresh horses and secure lodging, their standardized design featuring central courtyards for unloading goods, stables with graded ventilation, and even rudimentary veterinary stations. Archaeologists at a site in Cappadocia uncovered ledger fragments showing these stops operated like ancient franchises, stocked with identical barley rations and spare wagon axles. The road's surface was a masterclass in engineering. Layered gravel for drainage, cambered to shed rainwater, and wide enough for 2 ox carts to pass, a width that later dictated Roman road standards. The real genius lay in the empire's courier system. Herodotus marveled at how messages could traverse the entire route in 7 days, thanks to relay riders who never stopped. Clay tablets from Persepolis record exact shift schedules. Mount fresh horse at dawn, reach Sardes station before noon. Modern recreations proved their speed. A message carried by horsemen moving at a steady trot could outpace even homing pigeons. But the road's true purpose wasn't just speed, it was control. Provincial governors knew an imperial inspector could appear within days, not months, making rebellion nearly impossible. Yet the most fascinating remnants aren't buildings or tablets, but cultural fingerprints. In Turkey, a caravanserai's walls still bear scratched graffiti, a Greek trader's doodle of a Persian griffin beside a Phoenician ship. In Armenia, local dialects absorbed old Persian words for bridge and toll, while roadside shrines blended Zoroastrian fire symbols with indigenous deities. The road didn't just move goods, it dissolved barriers, creating the world's first multicultural corridor. Today, satellite imaging reveals how modern highways eerily shadow the royal road's path, a testament to Persian surveyors who chose routes based on millennia-old understandings of geography and wind patterns. Some sections, like the stretch through Iran's Zagros Mountains, remain in use as rural tracks, their surfaces still firm after 25 centuries. Others survive only as faint lines in barley fields or the stubborn persistence of place names. Darband, gateway marking where the road squeezed through mountain passes. Shahr-e, King Station, denoting long-vanished administrative hubs. The ultimate irony, while Darius built the road to showcase Persian might, it became the artery through which Alexander's armies marched to dismantle the empire. Yet even in ruin, its influence endured. Roman highways, the Silk Road, even the U.S. Postal Service's relay system all owed debts to this Achaemenid innovation. That's the paradox of infrastructure. Built to serve power, it often outlives its creators, becoming not just a path for armies but a runway for ideas. Deep in the crimson-veined salt mines of Zanjan, a pickaxe struck something far stranger than crystal in 1993, not rock but human hair. What emerged from the halite deposits were the salt men of Iran, a collection of eerily preserved miners whose bodies had been pickled in sodium's embrace for over 2,000 years. These aren't skeletal remains, but fully intact figures, leathery skin stretched over muscle, matted beards still caked with salt, even a single intact eyeball that stared blindly across millennia. The most famous, known as Salt Man I, wears the expression of his final moments, head tilted back, mouth agape, as if frozen mid-cry when the tunnel collapsed around him. What makes these accidental mummies extraordinary isn't just their preservation, but the stories etched into their bodies. Forensic analysis reveals spinal deformities from years of crouching in narrow shafts, while lung tissue blackened by salt dust hints at respiratory agony. One body still clutches a hemp rope in his mummified grip, its fibers tested positive for cannabinoids, possibly the oldest physical evidence of workers using cannabis to endure brutal labor. Yet the most haunting detail lies in their pockets. Scraps of fabric, walnut shells, and a single sheep bone suggest these weren't slaves, but men who packed meager lunches before descending into the earth's gut, never to return. The salt's antiseptic properties created a time capsule of ancient industry. Tool marks on the walls show precise mining techniques. Wedges driven along crystal seems to extract slabs without shattering. Leather bags found nearby contained lichen used to test air quality, a primitive but effective early warning for toxic gases. Even the miner's clothing tells a tale of adaptation. Woven from a blend of wool and goat hair, the fabric's tight weave resisted salt corrosion while providing flexibility for tight spaces, a textile engineered specifically for subterranean survival. But the salt men guard darker secrets. Multiple skulls show healed fractures, suggesting frequent tunnel collapses were just part of the job. Isotope analysis of their teeth reveals many weren't locals, but migrants from distant regions possibly pressed into service. Yet paradoxically, their burial positions some carefully laid on their sides. Hands folded imply comrades took time to arrange them respectfully before abandoning the collapsed tunnels. This duality of brutality and care paints a nuanced portrait of ancient labor, exploitative yet communal, deadly yet valued. Modern archaeology is rewriting their final chapters. CT scans of Saltman 4 revealed a lethal blow to the head, possibly from a falling rock, while his intestines contained parasite eggs pointing to contaminated water. Another body's stomach held traces of fermented dairy and lentils, a last meal now chemically preserved. Perhaps most poignant are the lice still clinging to one miner's scalp, their tiny bodies perfectly mineralized, eternal witnesses to the itch that outlived their host. These spectral figures now reside in Tehran's Archaeology Museum, their darkened skin gleaming under glass like polished mahogany. Visitors often remark on their peaceful expressions, but there's nothing tranquil about their legacy. They're reminders that history's grand narratives of kings and conquests were built on countless anonymous backs, their stories sealed in salt until chance and a pickaxe set them free. And in that crystalline silence, they speak volumes about the price of progress, the resilience of the human body, and the unexpected ways the earth sometimes returns its debts. From golden declarations of human rights etched in clay to the silent whispers of salt-preserved miners, these 30 artifacts have taken us on an unforgettable journey through ancient Persia's dazzling ingenuity and enduring mysteries. Each object, whether it was Darius's precise gold derricks revolutionizing economies, the wind-cooled qanats sustaining life in deserts, or the haunting prosthetic eye from shahr-e, reveals a civilization far ahead of its time. The Oxus Treasure showed us Persia's mastery of metal and multicultural exchange, while the Behistun Inscription proved how words carved into cliffs could unlock entire languages. We marveled at griffins snarling from silver scepters, watched stone ambassadors eternally ascending palace stairs, and stood humbled before Cyrus's modest tomb, a king who conquered empires yet asked for no grand monument. Together, these artifacts paint a portrait of a civilization that defies stereotypes. This wasn't just an empire of conquest, but of calculated tolerance, where subject nations weren't erased but celebrated on palace walls. Their innovations, from standardized currency to brain surgery, weren't merely practical but visionary, bridging the gap between earthly needs and cosmic ideals. Even their failures, like the Qajar forgeries or Cambyses's lost tomb, remind us how history is never just one story, but layers waiting to be peeled back. Now, we'd love to hear which artifact captured your imagination. Was it the Pazyryk carpet's frozen gallop across millennia, or the way Anahita's golden plaque turned worship into wearable art? Share your thoughts below, and if this journey has sparked your curiosity, dive deeper. Visit museums like the Louvre or Tehran's National Collection, where these objects whisper their secrets in person. Pick up books like Persian Fire by Tom Holland for epic history, or The Shape of Ancient Thought for their philosophical legacy. Because the true magic of archaeology isn't just uncovering the past, it's realizing how these fragments, like mirrors held up across time, reflect pieces of ourselves. Who knows, the next great Persian mystery might just be waiting for you to unravel it.